Welcome to the latest edition of the Hudson County Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Haig, and don't forget that always the Hudson County Sports Podcast is brought to you by the great people at Stan Sports Center, located at 528 Washington Street in Hoboken, and the telephone number there is 201-798-4466. And with me today is my very, very special guest, who probably is the most diverse of all the podcast guests that we've had. Because I don't know yes, great athlete, no question there, but in terms of all the different things that this young man has done in his career, it's pretty outstanding. He went from being a great football player in high school at St. Joseph's in the Palisades in West New York, then went from there to West Virginia University. And it's not the University of West Virginia, it's called West Virginia University. A lot of people don't know that. You had a phenomenal career there at West Virginia, and then you had a little bit of a taste of pro football. But then, more importantly, after that, you went on to being a teacher and a coach, and more importantly, in recent years, you become an author, and you've become managing his wife, who is a recording artist, a Grammy award-winning recording artist, and this is just one of the most diverse people that we've had. And he also has his own podcast too, as well. So, and it is my good friend Eugene Napoleon. Eugene, how you doing today? And thanks so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Jim, thank you so very much, man. I greatly appreciate you. I've known you for many, many years, and it's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for having me on your show.
No problem, and glad to have you, Eugene. There's no question. So, all right, let's turn the clock back. I'm going to say a long, long time ago, but a good number of years ago, and talk a little bit about growing up. And you grew up in Jersey City. And what part of Jersey City did you grow up in?
Yes, Mary Guard Housing Projects.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, and
so you're a product of the projects. Wow.
Absolutely. Interestingly enough, my mom, we lived on Stevens Avenue, and unfortunately, back in 1970, it was one of the biggest house fires at that time in the history of Jersey City. My 9-year-old sister saved my life when I was 4.
Wow.
So yeah, she lost her life in that fire.
Your sister lost her life in the fire?
Yeah. My 9-year-old sister saved my life. And she died in that fire. Her and a courageous firefighter. And my mom was looking for. After that tragedy, she didn't want to live in a wood frame house anymore. So
wow.
We moved to Mary Guard Projects when I was 4 years old.
Okay.
And, lived there ever since. So, you know.
See, now when you lived on Stevens Avenue, we were neighbors, because I lived on the Boulevard in Greenville Avenue. Since you lived on Stevens, we were neighbors, but you would have never known.
Yeah. Well, I think when you go through tragedy like that, I'm the youngest of 7 kids. My mom, for years, buried, 5 of her 7 kids.
Oh, Lord God!
Yeah. So, the story is interesting, Jim. It really is.
Your mother had to bury 5 of her 7 children. Oh, my Lord God.
Yeah. So, me growing up and marrying, I give a lot of credence to, obviously, my mother, and thank God for coming out of a Christian home and understanding, being focused and disciplined and all those different things, because when you go through those type of tragedies, again, it can either make or break you. My mother always believed in the whole value system and doing things the right way and striving to be the best you can and all of those things. And, she's a Southern Belle. My mother was from Kingstree, South Carolina.
Okay.
So she understood the importance of education, and that's where the whole piece of, going to St. Joseph's became real prevalent, because she felt like that was the best place to send me, and I thank God for it. I'll give you a quick funny story of how that even happened.
All right, but well, here's what we're going to do. Before we go into St. Joe's, let's talk a little bit about your childhood. And what was it? Were you at a very, very young age? Did you start playing sports? And did you play all sports?
Absolutely. I wanted to play, which is funny, baseball. I played baseball for Westside Little League.
Okay.
Because I was too small, believe it or not, at that time. to play recreation football. I was a tiny guy, boy, I tell you what. And baseball was my first sport. So from baseball, I used to watch my friends. They played for the Midtown Raiders.
Okay.
And one of my friends, Calvin Spivey, begged me to come out for the team. And it was funny because my mother didn't want me to play football. I was just too tiny, she felt. So she felt I would always get hurt. And my god sister, Lisa Miller, actually signed me up to play football, unbeknownst to my mom.
Oh, my gosh.
So the first week of practice, I would come home from school and go right to Lisa's house. She lived right down in the next court in the projects anyway. So my mom really didn't know. And come to find out, after the first scrimmage game, I had a few touchdowns and played very well. The coach, Ron and Frank Precon, Ron had to come over to the house and explain to my mom, listen, he's really good. Please, let him play. And one thing led to another, and my mom said, okay, I'm going to let him play. And that's how it started. So, yeah, I wound up playing basketball, football, and baseball. I was, much younger, but football, I wound up taking over the other two, and that became really a love of mine.
Right, but baseball was the first sport you played growing up?
Baseball, believe it or not, baseball was the first sport I played. At the time, I had the Westside Little League record for the most inside the park home runs.
Well, isn't every home run in Little League inside the park? Because they all call it Little League home runs when you got a single and then they threw the ball around the whole field. If you ran all the way around, they called that a home run. But
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I must have had about 15 to 20 of them.
Okay.
Because once I went in it, if you didn't catch it, I was running the bases.
All right, and you could we knew you could run, that's for sure. But all right, was baseball your favorite sport back then when you were a little kid?
Believe it or not, at the time it wasn't. I just did it because it was the first sport I played. I had some success doing it. It was okay. I think I played for 2 or 3 seasons. But once I got a taste of playing football, I'll be honest with you, Jim, that was it. Was nothing like taking a handoff and making somebody miss and taking it the distance. Once I got a taste of that, I didn't play baseball anymore. Basketball was then a close second.
Okay.
Sport. I enjoyed basketball, but once I made the choice to go to high school, I knew I wasn't going to play any other sport but football.
All right. Well, before we get to high school, all right, what was it like to grow up in the Marion Gardens and have all those kids living in the projects and playing all the different sports together? And how much did that give you a love of, say, sports and the love of competition?
Let me tell you something, and that's a great question. Undoubtedly, growing up in a talent-rich area like Jersey City to begin with is one thing. But growing up in the competitive atmosphere in Marion Garden Projects, everybody played a sport.
Right. At least one, right?
At least one.
Yeah.
And they were all good. Let me tell you something. You couldn't be a slouch playing with the kids I grew up with because they all were very, very talented. So, yeah, the competitive juices, definitely flowed. And I'm a competitor by nature. So at the end of the day, that just helped to, as they say, iron sharpens iron. It just helped to sharpen my skills. And it helped me to become laser focused when you're competing, especially because we won multiple championships in every sport that I played growing up as a kid.
Okay.
That's how much talent we had, coming out of Marion Garden Projects. It was a tremendous time. You talk about a learning curve. Like I said, you couldn't. There was no. I remember playing, basketball where you got 5-on-5 and loser get off the court. Well, we had games where we played probably 4, 5, 6, 7 games without getting off the court.
That was the most important thing. You didn't want to give up the court, so you try to keep winning as much as possible. Because if you did lose, who knows when you were going to get back on that court again? So Yeah.
Very true.
Right. All right. So where did you go to grammar school?
I went to PS 23.
Okay.
And then I went to PS 32.
Oh wow. Okay. Where is PS 32? Where is that located?
It was downtown, right down by Dickinson.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
See, you learn something new every day. I don't even know what PS32 is. I knew what 23 is. That's right on Broadway and right near the Dairy Queen, as everybody says, right? You know.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, well, that's where you walked right up from Marion Gardens right there to 23, and that's where probably all those Marion Gardens kids all probably went to 23 school.
Most of my friends went to 23. Some of them, believe it or not, the ones that moved, some of them went to 22. Some of them went to, what was that, 39 down by Duncan.
By Duncan, sure.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. So, you said, was it right around that time that your love of football took over? I mean, now, mind you, too, we all know that you were a pretty damn good basketball player, too, as well, even though you were short. You were a good basketball player. You played bitty basketball. You also played CYO. Did you play for, who did you play CYO basketball for that I remember? Did you play for Mount Carmel? Who did you play for?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I went through that league, which was interesting, and I wound up playing out of it. You remember the name Emmanuel Holmes, Sam Holmes?
Absolutely, sure.
That was my point guard. That was my guy who would throw alley-oops up from half court, and I would catch it, and it would. Back then, the elevator went all the way to the top, so I would have a few games, a few slams a game.
Okay.
To see of Sam Holmes.
All right. Well, that must have been fun playing with him because he at least gave up the rock. Nobody gave up the rock in grammar school. That's for damn sure. Everybody wanted to shoot and run with it. So at least you had somebody that gave up the rock. So, so you continued to play basketball through your grammar school days. Baseball was done. You gave up for baseball and grammar.
Baseball was done probably right around the 6th, 7th grade.
Okay.
You know, just strictly basketball and football. I think I made the right decision.
Oh yeah, I would say so. All right, but you don't sell yourself any line of goods. You were a good basketball player too as well. And you played for basketball. You played for a whole bunch of different teams. Correct? Am I wrong?
Yeah. Definitely. We wound up playing. We made the little all-star team that used to travel a little bit. So Coach Hurley, we had a little thing with him, myself, Sam, a few other players, and he had a really good team. As a matter of fact, Coach Hurley really wanted us to come to St. Anthony's.
Right.
You know, but right around 7th, 8th grade, you know, you going out and I probably averaged somewhere 20, 25 points a game, which wasn't bad back then.
No, that was very good for bitty basketball, youth basketball. 20, 25 a game? Not many kids did that, you know?
Right. It wasn't too bad for me, but
yeah.
I knew that football was going to, I just knew that I'm going to wind up playing football. And you know what I always thought, Jim, that I wasn't going to grow to be any taller than 5'10", 5'11". I just, it just kind of felt that way. So a smaller guard, even though I was considered a shooting guard, if you're not, for me, I just thought if I'm not 6'2", 6'3", it would be real tough to get an opportunity to go to Division I school at that size, especially if that's not your dominant sport.
Right. Okay. But also too, you were quicker than everybody else that was trying to guard you. You would just put the ball on the floor and go right by people. So I mean that wasn't the problem at all, right?
Right. No, yeah. That's true.
Yeah. Just put the ball on the floor, go by people.
You remember back in that era, you talking about Dave Rivers and those guys.
Sure.
Dave Johnson was a little bit older than us, but
right.
Watching those guys, they were tremendous. Terry DeHare, they were tremendous ballers.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you're talking about playing, a similar position, either a point or shooting guard. Yeah. I kind of said they do what they do on the basketball court, but they can't do what I do on the football field. So
that's it. Well, that's for damn sure. That's for damn sure. Although Mandy wasn't a bad football player.
No, he wasn't.
Mandy also played in Jersey City Recreation. He wasn't a bad football player, but he wasn't the football player you were. But in terms of being a basketball player, you could put the ball on the floor and just go right past people and didn't have to worry about anybody trying to guard you. So your height, I don't think mattered whatsoever. You were just going to go by people. That's all, right?
Right. Yeah. It happened that way for a little bit. I just kind of figured, you know what? Maybe sticking to one sport was going to be important, especially knowing that you're trying to get into these parochial schools and academics are going to obviously come. It's going to be just as important as me playing a sport. It's going to be me excelling in the classroom. So I knew that probably trying to play more than one sport was going to be difficult, and I did it actually. My freshman year, I did play, for St. Joe's on the basketball team.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So talk a little bit about that decision of being a kid from Marion Gardens to go to St. Joe's in West New York, and there weren't a lot of Jersey City kids going to school in West New York. How did that all come about? And was there a driving influence that made you decide to go to St. Joe's?
Absolutely. A good friend of mine who played with me in recreation football. Interestingly enough, one of the coaches, Coach Joe Pizzucci, was actually, I guess, coming to take a look at him.
Okay.
And the weirdest thing.
Who was the guy that he was coming to take a look at?
And I can't believe Jim. I can't think of Jim's last name.
Oh, okay.
But he played wide receiver for us. I remember that, and he was pretty good. He's a really good athlete, actually.
All right.
So he wound up coming to look at him, and one thing led to another. He wound up seeing me.
Oh, wow. And Blasucci was not the head coach at that time. Frank Gargiulo was?
At St. Joe's, yeah.
Yeah, yes. Right. Yeah. Right. So there was a chance to play for an immortal.
He's asking Ron, and Frank Precop, well, wait a minute. Well, who is this kid? And they tell him. And he comes over to me, he starts talking to me, and I didn't even know where St. Joe's was located, Jim. I had no idea.
How could you? How could you? You're from Marion Gardens in Jersey City. How would you know where West New York was? I didn't know where it was.
I had no idea. So he says to me, listen, I would like to talk to your mom and invite you up to the school for a visit. And the funny thing, I've always wanted to go to Pittsburgh. Since I was 7 years old, I told my mom in our little kitchen that I was going to play at the University of Pittsburgh. I was going to follow Tony Dorsett's footsteps. He was my favorite sports athlete.
Absolutely. He was your idol. That's it. Are you there? Up. I lost Eugene for a second, so we're going to have to take a break. And we'll be back and pick up with more with Eugene in 1 second. So let's pick it up. Let's pick it up right there. Okay, we're back. We're back with Eugene Napoleon, who's telling his life story. Eugene, tell us a little bit about Tony Dorsett.
Absolutely. My mom was in the kitchen. Never forget this. She was cooking, and I wish I'd have paid better attention because I can't cook a lick. So Pitt was playing Notre Dame. And I think he must have had a 300-yard day, a few touchdowns. I remember screaming, watching him, carry the ball. And my mother comes right out the kitchen. She's like, "What's going on?" And I said, "Ma, you gotta look at this guy." And my mother always had the ability, Jim, to sit down and really listen. And you were the most important person in the room. She always had that ability to just sit and listen. So she shut the food off.
Okay.
She comes down and she's, well, what's going on with him? So I'm telling her, I know exactly where I want to go to school, Mom. I want to go to Pittsburgh. I want to wear 33. I want to be just like that guy. He's phenomenal. His name is Tony Dorsett. So I'm telling her all of this. My mom always said this, and I'm so glad it happened when I was that young of age, because she always would tell me, don't just say what you want to do. What's the blueprint? How are we going to get there? How are we going to achieve these goals? So don't just say it if you don't have a blueprint or a remedy to achieve it. That day, at 7 years of age, I told her, I'm going to go to Pitt because I'm going to work hard. Well, how does that happen? It's not just about sports. You got to be a good student, right? I'm going to get a scholarship. I'm going to be good in the classroom. All the different things I had to tell her to not just say, but to come up with, the actual blueprint, how you're going to obtain these goals. So St. Joe's, which was interesting, I remember telling, Coach Pizzucci, any high school that has a legitimate tie to the University of Pittsburgh is the high school I want to go to. Now,
okay.
This is uncanny. So on our visit, my mom and I go up, for the visit. Here's what's funny. The minute my mother saw the chapel built into the school, that was it for her. Here's where you're going. Okay? For me, it just so happened that Frank Gargiulo Jr., was maybe on break at that particular time. He played at Pittsburgh.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
He was a
Okay.
He was sitting in Mr. G's office with this big, I'll never forget it, this big, bright, gold and blue pit jacket on. And I can just remember seeing the big PITT letters across the back of this jacket. And of course, Mr. G introduces me to him. We have a long conversation. And I believe he was a freshman at Pitt at the time.
Okay.
On a full scholarship. Oh, that was it. Let me tell you something, Jim. That was it for me right there.
All right.
I knew, I want to come to St. Joe's.
So that's it. You wanted to go to St. Joe's because of Frank Jr. Okay.
Because I figured that's a connect.
That's the connection that's going to get you to Pitt. From. I'll be darned.
Mr. G said to me, I'll never forget it. He told me and my mom, it doesn't matter how many touchdowns you score, how many yards you rush for. The most important criteria for me is you have to be a good person, the best version of yourself. Because you're going to be a human being far longer than you're going to be a football player.
Okay.
So the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what you do as an athlete. You have to be a good person. Here it is. I'm in the 8th grade. And that's the type of stuff that Frank Gargiulo Sr. is telling me in his office.
Okay.
And telling my mom. Right off the bat, my mom felt very comfortable sending me to St. Joe's because she understood if this is the type of tutelage and the type of advice and the type of, person you're going to be around for 4 years, absolutely, because she knew right off the bat it wasn't just about playing sports with Mr. G.
Okay. Now tell me a little bit about your friends growing up. None of them went to St. Joe's, right?
No.
They all went to different schools in Jersey City.
All went to different schools, yeah.
All right.
I had a few friends who went to Ferris, a few went to Snyder. A few went to Hudson Catholic.
All right.
My brother, God bless him, Vinny Munn, went to Marist.
Oh, okay.
I was the only one until I talked Sam Holmes into transferring from Dickinson to St. Joe's.
Okay.
But that was it.
So you were going to St. Joe's no matter what because of Frank Jr. Okay, no doubt.
No doubt about it. And when I visited, a lot of people didn't understand, especially my friends who were from Dickinson. They were upset with me because of winning Little League championships together in basketball and in football. The dreams were, we're going to go to Dickinson and we're going to turn Dickinson out. We're going to make sure that, you know what I mean?
Yep.
We're going to win a state championship with Dickinson. We're going to win county championships, But for me, that dream of being able to go to a high school that I just kind of felt like the passion for me was I wanted to go someplace that was connected to Pitt.
Okay.
And it just so happened that that's exactly what wound up happening.
Yeah, isn't that funny? All right, so tell me a little bit about going to St. Joe's, and the football program at that time at St. Joe's was pretty good.
Before I got there, they were 0-9. I want to say 2 seasons in a row.
Okay.
So they were struggling a little bit, but again, my freshman year, we had a lot of good kids that came in that particular class. So you kind of knew, Mr. G and that staff, they were really good coaches.
Yep.
We were very well prepared. By the time I was a sophomore and junior,
and what's that like? What's that like? 1985, 86 in that realm?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Completely. You're talking about let me see. You're talking 80, 81, 82, 83, 84.
Okay.
The early 80s, for St. Joe's, you figured we won 2 county championships. We played. We lost in the semifinals my junior year. My sophomore year, in the States. And we lost in the States, actually, my junior year. We lost to St. Paul's 6.
Okay.
But just a great experience. The whole program was revitalized and turned around in that 3 to 4 year span.
Absolutely.
A lot of football games.
A lot of talent, too. All right, didn't you also play Pope John of Sparta?
And Pope John of Sparta.
And they said that they didn't want to play St. Joe's in Miller Stadium because they said it was too dangerous, and they looked to move the game elsewhere. And Gargiulo put his foot down and said, "No, this is our home field, and we deserve to play here. We're going to play here." And the state, there was a huge war over it and what have you, and you ended up still playing there. And I think you beat them in the state semifinals, and then you lost to Paul VI of Clifton in the finals. Is that what it was? Yeah.
That's exactly right. You are a historian, my friend.
Yeah. I just remember writing a story about, they said that that Miller Stadium was too dangerous to play in. I said, and I remember writing a story saying, why was it not dangerous to play in all season long, and now all of a sudden we got to get to the state semifinals, and now it's dangerous, you know? And the only reason why they said it was dangerous is because the one end zone there was a wall that was, you wasn't in any danger of touching the wall, but it was padded, and it was close, but I don't think anybody ever collided into the wall. I just think Pope John was looking for an excuse.
My 4 years there, let me tell you something. I scored a lot of touchdowns in that particular end zone, and I don't remember running into the wall not one time.
Right. Well, because you were smarter than everybody else too, so that's another reason why you didn't run into the wall. But that was a great time for St. Joe's football. They, and you had a lot of talent. I'm trying to think, was Mike Minervini your quarterback?
Mike Minervini was my quarterback.
Right.
Joe Spano was after Mike, who's also very talented.
Right. J.D. Marteveld was one of the linemen on that team too, right?
He was 2 years before me.
Oh, 2 years before you. Okay, all right.
Yeah, but again, when you look at what they had, the history of that talent, you're 100% right. There was a lot of good players who went to St. Joe's.
Absolutely.
But a lot of good players.
Yep. So, and obviously too, it must have been a lot of fun playing for somebody like Gargiulo, who was a legend, still is a legend. God bless him. And he's got a school named after him, for God's sakes. I mean, so
Yes.
you go right into High Tech High School. It's not in the eyes of that school. It says Frank Gargiulo School. So I mean, that's pretty impressive that when you go there, and I'll be there Saturday for the county finals in basketball. But when you pull in, you see Frank Gargiulo School. It's right there. So he's a legendary man, and that coaching staff, like you said, Lasucci was a good assistant coach. Ended up being the head coach at St. Joe's, albeit in some bad St. Joe's teams. But then he also was the head coach at Ferris. And I'm trying to think, you had some other good assistant coaches that were at St. Joe's. Joe Spano.
Was our D coordinator, was the heck of a coach. Larry Venable, Coach Venable.
Okay.
Tom Lang.
Tom Lang was there too, right? Okay.
Tom Lang was there. Yeah. We had a really good staff, and that's what I mean about being prepared for every game and really understanding the X's and O's and being a true student of the game. Again, those experiences for me personally prepared me for college and even after that, because when you learn the game from that standpoint, you thoroughly understand it. Yeah, you could be the best athlete that you think you are, but at a certain point, as you grow and as you go to different levels, athleticism is one part of it.
Sure.
The other part of it is from the neck up.
Well,
and if you don't understand that, talent gets you but so far. It has to be a combination of both, an intellect and a skill set. Well,
you never had to worry about that part of it, because you were always one of the most intellectual athletes I ever interviewed whatsoever. So I don't think intellect was ever a problem with you. Height maybe, but intellect never a problem whatsoever. So what was it like to play at St. Joe's at that time? I mean, was it obviously was a lot of fun? It certainly wasn't a lot of fun commuting there. I mean, that was tough to get to and from school every day. But what was it like to play at St. Joe's?
Yeah, Jim, my mom didn't have a car, so I got up from Marion, about 5:30 in the morning, walk 12 blocks. It sounds cliche. Walk 12 blocks up the hill, catch the 44 Park Avenue bus.
And that 44, as they called that bus, 44 Bergen Line. Bergen Line. It was the Bergen Line bus. So, right, but that took an entire tour of Union City and West New York. That was, you got a real good tour out of that.
But you know what? Again, it teaches you discipline. It teaches you time management. All of those things that you need. Those are life skills.
Yep.
And again, it was very beneficial for me to do that at that young age. It meant a lot. It really did. And I think my mom, what a choice. Again, what a choice. Because, like you said, from the Marion section, yeah, I was the only kid making that hike for 4 years.
Right. Make it, and that was a hike. All right. Now you said you had 7 brothers and sisters. Where did you stand in the line of the 7?
The youngest. I was the
Oh,
baby.
you're youngest. Okay. So.
Yeah, I was the baby. So, some of my God bless them all, they used to get upset because they said, oh, Mom got soft when you came around because she's letting you do things she ain't let us do. But again,
Well, she knew that she wasn't going to have any more after you. Like after 7, she probably looked at the heavens and said, "Please, Lord, no more."
Absolutely. I'll
Yeah.
tell you something, Jim. Another thing about St. Joe's, which is really, really cool. Tom Lennon, still to this day, is one of the top,
Recruiting guys. Yep.
analysts for sports, and used to pick all the All-American teams and everything. He started following St. Joe's because of my career there, and I will never forget it. To have him fly from Chicago to come check out, my senior year, my junior and senior year actually, I wound up making 7 high school American teams because of Tom Lennon.
Wow. Okay.
That was something for me personally. I was probably more proudest of that than anything else because it literally took St. Joe's to another level when you talk about national recruiting.
Yep.
So I was recruited by every major college in the country.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, because of that notoriety, I was very, very, very satisfied and happy with everything Mr. G told me I would accomplish if I worked hard in the classroom and both obviously on the athletic field, things would fall into place. I believed him. I did what I was supposed to do, and everything he said would happen actually happened.
Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit about your recruiting from high school into college, and you said you had it in your hearts that you were going to go to Pitt. What happened there in terms of recruiting? Did they show no interest in you, or?
I got my first offer from Pitt when I was a sophomore.
Wow.
And I wound up going to see Dan Marino play at Rutgers, I believe it was his senior year. I actually got tickets to that game.
Okay.
So I wound up going, God bless him, Mr. Kramer, who used to be head of football operations. He's passed on now. Got me tickets to that game, and I remember going, and actually they were playing in the Meadowlands. I remember seeing them in the Meadowlands, Pitt versus Rutgers. Man, once again, what a tremendous, just sight to take all of that in. So that offer came along with many others rather quickly. One thing about recruiting, even back then, same as it is now, you get one D1 offer, everybody follows suit.
Sure.
So by the time I went into my junior and senior year, literally, like I said, I had offers from every school in the country. So I changed my top 5 almost every week to the point where NCAA wanted to call. They called to try to figure out what's going on.
Okay. You wanted to change your top 5 every week. Okay.
Because back then, you remember, in the 80s, there was a lot of illegal recruiting going on.
Sure was.
Going on that shouldn't be going on.
Sure was. Now.
So how do you go from 1 minute it's Nebraska and Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, yada yada yada. The next week is something totally different. But I knew already. I verbally committed to Pitt early part of my senior year, because that's where I wanted to go. Like I said, since I was 7 years old, and I thank God for the head coach at the time and running back coach Andy O'Bannon was my running back coach, and Coach Fazio, God bless him, was the head coach at Pitt.
Okay.
He knew that I was gonna. I verbally committed quietly, and they allowed me to take my 5 visits, which is really cool. They allowed me to take my 5 visits because they figured here's a kid from Marion Garden Projects in Jersey City, New Jersey. He gets a chance to go to all these different schools. Why not let him? We're going to take his word. He committed to us. We're going to take his word that he's going to come. So my visits were SMU, Oklahoma, Pittsburgh, Maryland, and Iowa.
Okay.
And I wound up canceling Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Nebraska.
And West Virginia wasn't even in the picture.
West Virginia wasn't even they wasn't in my top 5. They were in my top 10. They were not in my top 5.
Wow. Okay. Isn't that funny how life turns out, right? So.
Absolutely. So the recruiting process was crazy because again, when you're visiting these schools and you're a high school American, I didn't realize the difference between. I guess going to Oklahoma taught me a lesson. So I go to Oklahoma. They make a whole big. Every school made a big deal out of All Americans because back then, the same as it is now, if you can land an All American, a lot of times as a recruiter, you're getting bonuses.
Right.
Those schools are being ranked a little bit higher because you have, 4 or 5, 6 All Americans coming into your freshman class. I didn't know anything about that until I took my visit to Oklahoma, and it was explained to me. They're making a big deal out of you because you are, number 3 ranked on the entire East Coast, you're 13th in the entire country. You are an All American. It makes their recruiting class look good.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know anything about all that. That's the business side of it. I didn't know anything about that. So everywhere I went, it was that way.
Yeah.
They would roll out the red carpet and make sure that because most of the kids I was, I guess, visiting with that was from either in-state kids from those particular universities or some national recruits like myself. Most of us who came in and we were nationally recruited kids were top flight, top 10, top 15, top 20 kids in the country that year being recruited.
Okay.
So it made sense. Then it started to click to me. I'll say, oh, okay, I get it. But once again, coming from where I came from, being humble enough to understand, I remember they was doing this huge article on me, and one of the papers was saying, your son's a star. What does, how does it feel to have a superstar in that house? She says, Eugene, listen, the only stars are in the sky. He still washes his dishes, makes his bed, and cleans his room.
That's the most important thing, right?
Absolutely.
And whatever mom said was golden. That was like the Bible, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you lost your father at a very young age, right? Your father was.
No, my dad died my rookie year in the AFL in 1992.
Oh wow! I thought he, for some reason, I thought he died when you were still in high school. No, okay.
No.
Okay. All right. So I take that back. I apologize. All right. So how do you go from being a top recruit at Pitt to ending up going to Morgantown? What transpired there?
And again, I'll tell you something. Another tragedy. So my freshman year at Pitt, out of 22 of us, 19 of us were high school Americans coming in that freshman class.
Wow.
We were the number 2 freshman class in the country. Some picked us to win, picked to win the national championship with all that talent. And,
right. And Foge Fazio is still the head coach then?
Yeah, Foge is still the head coach.
Okay.
And you will laugh at this. Tony Saragusa, myself, and Mark Stepnowski
were
the only 3 freshmen, and Brian Davis, the only 4 freshmen that were not redshirted.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So going into the Boston College game, which was the 3rd game of the season, I want to say, my oldest sister passes away. She had an aneurysm of the brain at 32 years of age.
Oh, gosh.
So I get the phone call. Never forget, it was a Sunday night. And my mom had a great sense of humor. So talking to her earlier in the day, we were laughing, clowning around, talking to my oldest sister, clowning around, laughing. She was actually supposed to come to that following week's game at Pitt against Boston College.
Okay.
And that's what we was actually setting up. I get a phone call probably 3:30 after practice. Actually, it was a little about 5:30 because we were right after practice, after study hall. I'm in my dorm and was actually taking a break from studying. Get the phone call, and my mom, she starts off with a joke like she always did. And apparently, my sister passed probably 3 o'clock in the morning that Sunday morning. They rushed her to the hospital, but she was already gone. By the time my mother called me, she had already taken care of what she had to take care of. And she knew calling me that was going to be, out of all my siblings back then, I was closest to my oldest sister, Miguel.
Okay.
Jim, that thing, let me tell you something. I couldn't even finish the conversation. The minute my mom told me, my teammate and roommate at the time was a wide receiver, John Murray, that's my guy, from Steubenville, Ohio. He was a great wide receiver at Pitt. He was my roommate. He actually took the phone. I couldn't even talk.
Wow.
And my mother explained to him what happened. Now, remember, we was just on the phone with my sister a day ago prior to that, talking about her coming. So she spoke to all, she knew all about all the guys. It was tough, man. I'll never forget it. That night, Foles used to do his interviews out of his house. He was doing an interview, and our center, Barry Penderjohn, was an All-American at Pitt, one of the captains. They called him. He came to get me from the dorm, drove me to Coach Fazio's house. And of course, I was a wreck. I was an emotional wreck. Knocked on the door. Mrs. Fazio came out. Barry told what happened. And she was horrified. She went. She got Coach. He came out. Gave me a big hug. He's in tears. I'm in tears. Barry's in tears. I mean, it was an emotional thing. They flew me home that night. They flew me from Pittsburgh to Newark to make sure I was with my mom that night.
Wow.
So I guess, here's where it gets a little bit. I think it's unfortunate the timing of it all. So what was said to my mother was really simple. Listen, Eugene academically is in good standing. He's fine academically, athletically. He's working hard. He's doing his thing. So none of this is going to affect where he is on the roster. None of this is going to affect him academically. Basically, we know how close-knit your family is. Let him be there for at least a week after the funeral to make sure that he's okay. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And that you're okay. That's what was said to my mother. Now, unfortunately, we played Boston College at Pittsburgh that Saturday. They said, Pitt did a great job. When we got to the funeral home, they must have spent, a decent amount of money with the flowers and the wreaths and everything was beautiful. It really was. Unfortunately, we lose to BC on national television.
Okay.
So here's where major college sports and football, the business side happens. Bury my sister. We get home. The phone rings. It's Coach Fazio. He wants to talk to my mom. I need to get on the plane and fly back to Pittsburgh that Sunday. Now, this was we buried her on a Saturday. I need to get my stuff together and fly back because we're playing West Virginia at West Virginia, and I'm supposed to start that game.
Okay.
So, again, now, like I said, a few days prior to that, that wasn't the conversation. Okay? That wasn't the conversation.
Right.
But that game took such a physical toll on the backfield. Our starting running back at the time, Charles Gladman, broke his ribs against BC that day. A.B. Brown had a messed up ankle. The other freshman who went in, Brian Davis, got injured. So there you go.
All
you know
right.
what I mean? So that was that. It was so hard for me to comprehend that because I'm thinking, we just buried my sister and we're talking about football.
Yeah.
My mom just lost her daughter and we're talking about football. I couldn't get past that for about a good day.
Okay.
But my mom said, listen, you're on a full scholarship there. They need you. This is what you have to do. You got to go. So I packed my things that Sunday morning, flew back to Pitt. And I'll lie to you not, I was very frustrated, Jim. Very frustrated. Because all I could think about is what my mom was going through back at home. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But one thing about adversity, it definitely does introduce you to your greater self, and it definitely does introduce you to, the character within. I had probably the best week of practice that week because I was so focused on making sure I dedicated the rest of the season to my sister.
Okay.
So for me, what a lot of people don't realize, you play at that level, you take your test, you grade out. You have to grade out 85 to 90 percentile if you're in the starting lineup or if you're a second stringer because you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, sure.
So you got to, the check downs and knowing what the defensive fronts are and blitzes, and if you're a running back being in the passing game, you got to know the check downs again, the audibles, all of that stuff. So I graded out that whole week of practice in the mid-90s. I knew my assignments, I knew what I had to do, I was well prepared. Dealing with the media as a true freshman playing, you know, at that time, since Tony Dorsett, you didn't have a true freshman running back start at Pittsburgh.
Right.
And even then, it wasn't a true because Charles Gladman was our guy. That was the All-American horse. That was the guy. You know, Craig Haywood was suspended. God bless him. Craig Ironhead was suspended that year.
Okay.
So he was
suspended. He suspended the whole year.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was suspended that whole year, that season.
Wow.
So he wasn't in the mix at the time. So we really had it was running back by committee after Charles got hurt. So going to West Virginia, I'll never forget it. The night before the game, when you do a bed check, I took all the first team reps, all in practice the whole week, preparing myself for the game. During bed check, Andy O'Bannock, our running back coach, comes and never forget it. He couldn't really look at me outside of saying, "Listen, it's not my decision. We're not going to start you tomorrow."
Wow.
So I'm like, "Excuse me?" And we're on the balcony, you know, at the hotel, and he says, "We're not going to start you tomorrow." I said, "Well, who are you going to start?" I took all the first team reps. And he said, "We're going to go with AB, you know, AB Brown." And again, I had no problem with that. But when you think of the whole circumstances, for me, I'm thinking if that were the case, I could have stayed home a few more days with my mom.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
You understand? So
and things might have been different. Who knows, right?
Right then and there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you right. My decision to leave Pitt was right then and there, Jim.
Okay.
Night. Because it clicked to me real quick that you don't care about me. You don't care about my family. You understand?
Yep.
This was something I could have stayed. I could have been home. So long story short, going into that game the next day, it didn't matter to me. I knew I'm out of here.
Okay.
I'm going to transfer, and I'll sit out a year. That's fine. Again, not being arrogant about it, but the truth of the matter is, being a blue chip All-American coming out of high school, I could have went to any school in the country. So I already knew once I said I'm transferring, I would have the same exact suitors as I did coming out of St. Joe's. And that's exactly what would happen. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll be back with my special guest Eugene Napoleon, and he's going to talk a little bit about his days at West Virginia and going forward. After this word from Stan Sports Center. Stan Sports Center is your local full-service sporting goods vendor and authorized team dealer. They offer quality products and dozens of brands to outfit your team top to bottom. Stan's has proudly been supporting the local community since 1946 and is your one-stop shop for uniforms, equipment, online team stores, and much more. Locations in Hoboken and Saddlebrook, and they just opened a warehouse in Boonton and servicing the entire tri-state area. Visit them on the web at Stans Plural Sports Plural CTR.com. Again, that's Stans Plural Sports Plural CTR.com, and check them out on social media for their latest creations. That's Stan Sports Center. Main location is 528 Washington Street in Hoboken. Telephone number there is 201-798-4466. And if you go down to Stan's and you say hello to my friends Danny and Todd and Lou, and tell them that you listen to the Hudson County Sports Podcast with Eugene Napoleon, you will get 10% off on anything in retail in the entire store. That's 10% off, not a bad deal at all, just by mentioning the Hudson County Sports Podcast. That's our main corporate sponsor, Stan Sports Center, located at 528 Washington Street in Hoboken. All right, we're back now with the second half with my special guest, Eugene Napoleon. And Eugene, now tell us about the decision to transfer. First, we got into the decision why you left Pitt, but what was it about West Virginia that made you transfer there?
Unbelievable. I took 5 more visits. I decided that I wanted to stay close to home. Again, to be closer to my mom. Didn't want to go on the West Coast. It was so weird. UCLA, USC, they were really upset with me that coaches, you didn't like me. You didn't like us at high school. Now with transferring, just at least take a visit. But again, my decision was to stay somewhat closer to home. And my first visit to Morgantown, it was unbelievable.
Really?
Don Nealon, let me tell you something about Coach Nealon, which was interesting. He reminded me again of Mr. G in the sense that it was so much bigger than football with him. And I wound up talking to him more about life and more about my sister and more about my mom and more about my family dynamics than I did football.
Okay.
His thing was, we already know. You would have known. He was one of our top recruits coming out of high school your senior year. So we offered you early like everybody else did. And we understood, look, you didn't come and you didn't visit us. We understand that. But getting a second chance to get you here, of course, we're going to take it. So that reigned a little bit more and rings a little bit more in my ears than anything else because I already went through the support side of it, Jim, to be honest with you.
Okay.
That decision was more business. It was more what was going to be the best fit for me at that time. And being in a culture where you had coaches, you had a fan base, you had a setting that fit what I needed emotionally at that particular time. So West Virginia was the perfect fit for me, and I have to be completely honest. Had I visited West Virginia out of high school, I probably would have committed to WVU out of high school, to be honest with you.
Wow, okay. Wow.
You know, and that's why I tell kids to this day, you got to go where the fit is for you. Athletically, if you are a good talent and you're going to work hard regardless of where you go, it'll work out for you. But it has to be the right fit for you. It's not all about the names, so to speak. It has to be the right fit for you. West Virginia and Morgantown was exactly what I needed, Jim, at that particular time of my life.
Okay. Morgantown, a little bit, obviously, totally different than Jersey City. You know,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's like a culture shock compared to Morgantown compared to Jersey City. And also totally different type of person, Coach Nealon as opposed to Coach Fazio. I mean, there's just not even a comparison of what,
The contrast was everything, including, like you just said, which is a very good point of reference, from, Pittsburgh being in the city, obviously Morgantown, no.
No. The Denny's shuts down at 6:30 at night. The Denny's closes at 6:30. That's how bad how rural Morgantown is. All right, go ahead.
But I'm gonna tell you, what a tremendous fit. It was a great choice. My mom used to come and visit, and she loved it. As a matter of fact, God bless her. My mom talked about moving to Morgantown, Jim.
Really?
Okay, that's how much she enjoyed her time in West Virginia.
Wow.
Just a real wholesome place with just great people, man. That's why for me, I'm gonna share this quick story with you. On my visit, again, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't even know what beer tastes like. Never drank a day in my life. So
okay.
I was an arcade guy, an arcade nut.
All right.
I'm at the arcade and I meet these two, an elderly couple. They were old enough to be probably my grandparents, right? When I tell you, we spoke for about almost 2 hours.
While playing Donkey Kong?
Say it again?
While playing Donkey Kong with the...
I'm playing these different games, and they're talking to me, and when I tell you, it was one of the most wholesome things that it has, and one of the warmest experiences I've ever had back then in my entire life, because it was almost God sent. They didn't talk about football. They didn't talk about any of that. It was just life.
Wow.
And it resonated with me so strongly that this was the right place for that reason alone. I tell people this all the time. Again, when you're that heavily recruited, you lose sometimes. The perspective shifts. Because if you don't come from a well-grounded house, some kids can get a little bit arrogant. Some kids can forget where they come from. My mom didn't allow that to happen.
Okay.
So, and I was always grounded with those morals and those things. So when you meet other people like that, it resonates with you. That older couple, it was like talking to my mom and my grandparents and things of that nature. We were talking about just life. And I'm telling you, Jim, I felt so comfortable. I said, you know what? This is obviously where I should be.
Wow.
It's not just about sports. This goes so beyond sports. These are the kind of people that are in and around West Virginia, the state of West Virginia. Apparently, this is really where you need to be. That's how I took it. That's how I looked at it.
Okay. Well, in '87 was your first year after you had to sit out for the red shirt.
Yeah.
87 was your first year, and Mountaineers were good, but '88 was a dream season, and you guys were 11-0 before you lost to Notre Dame, I guess, in the bowl game, right? Is that it you lost to? In the Fiesta Bowl, and you played with perhaps Major Harris was the quarterback, right? And he finished in the top three for the Heisman. So that must have been just a great time that you felt like, okay, I made the right choice to go to West Virginia. Pittsburgh's on the balls of their ass, and they're not doing nearly as good. And I'm now at West Virginia, and we're 11-0. So that must have been, obviously you ran into Tony Rice and another guy by the name of Tim Brown who ended up winning the Heisman. But Major Harris was finished third in the Heisman. So that must have been a great time for you to be playing college football at West Virginia.
And actually, about 2 years ago, I wound up talking to Tony Rice, and we laugh about this thing now, but because and they know, and he admitted it. If Major Harris had not gotten hurt,
yes,
okay, that would have been a totally different deal. They didn't have an answer. Nobody had an answer for Major Harris. That '88 season, '87, '88, or '89.
Right.
You just didn't have an answer for him because no matter how you cut it, Jim, if you look at what he was able to do. Major was good for either 21 to 28 points a game by himself.
Exactly. He was Michael Vick before Michael Vick.
That
he was the same type of player that Mike Vick was, except the fact that Major Harris was right-handed. But in terms of throwing and running and making plays and being an electric type player, that's who Major Harris was a lot like.
The impact of the game for him. You literally had to change your philosophy on defense when you played us with Super Number 9 at quarterback.
Correct.
And I didn't care who we played, period.
Right. All right, and you also had a very, very good wide receiver, too, and I can't think, who ended up playing in the NFL.
Reggie Rimber was unbelievable.
Right, that's the other guy I'm thinking of. So.
You had Reggie Rimber, you had James Jett, you had Grandis Bell, you had Calvin Phillips, you had Keith Wynn.
Right. No wonder why you didn't play as much as you did. See,
Say it again.
I said no wonder why you didn't get a chance to play as much as you thought you might because you had so much talent on that team. That team was talented, boy.
That team and back then people didn't understand. It's not like it is now. We had running back by committee. Myself, A.B. Brown, Hunter Johnson, Craig Taylor. Oh my God.
Yep.
Major himself. So everybody had a chance to carry the ball. If you look at our averages, I averaged 5.5 yards a carry. AB averaged, I think, 5.1 yards a carry. Craig Taylor averaged about, I think 5 yards a carry. Hunter Johnson averaged 5.2 yards a carry.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, Major averaged about 7 yards a carry.
Right. Yeah.
So it's at any given point, none of us carried the ball enough. None of us had 1,000 yards. But what people don't understand, when you look at the averages, right? If we were a one-back team and you average, let's say, 19 to 20 carries a game, any one of us would have had, 1,200, 1,300 yard season.
Okay.
So that's, for me, I look at it that way. Everybody got a chance to touch the rock. Is it something that you give up on when you talk about playing in a backfield with that type of talent or playing on a team from top to bottom with that type of talent? Of course it is. But see, here's where the competitive nature and understanding team versus individuals, you win with a team. And we have a very, very good team.
Incredible team. Incredible. And all told, you could have won the national championship. The officials seem to like Notre Dame more than they like West Virginia. That's all.
Listen, I'm glad you said that. I'll just say it this way. I agree with you 100%, Joe.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, you have to agree because you guys got taken back into behind the woodshed and got spanked like little girls. By the officials, all wearing black and white, and that's because if you played any other team other than Notre Dame, you would have won the national championship.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's the truth. So, all right. Anyway, so after your career is over at West Virginia, you got the chance to play professional football. And
Yes.
first of all, talk about the week of the 89-90 draft, the 90 draft. All right. Did you think you had a chance of getting drafted by the NFL?
Interestingly enough, Mel Kiper had me, I think I was 18th, the 18th ranked back in that particular draft. You know, when they came out with the Kiper book, whatever the case may be. So,
and there was no such thing as combines back then, right?
Right.
Yeah. You had to go basically, you may have went to somebody's pro day, and that's how you got timed and clocked doing somebody's pro day, but there was no such thing as a combine where everybody was there. So,
they had it wasn't what it is now.
Yep.
But I'm going to tell you with me, unfortunately, I got hurt my senior year. So I wound up playing through an injury plague senior year. I had a crack in my right ankle.
Oh, you're kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so ligaments, the whole thing was ridiculous. So I wound up playing hurt that whole year, nursing it back to health to the best of my ability. So it wasn't the kind of year that I probably could have had I been 100% healthy. But
okay.
It is what it is. So I remember because back then, there was only 28 teams in the NFL back then.
Yep.
All 28 teams came out to scout me. 20 of the 28 teams had me listed as a mid to late round draft pick. 8 had me listed as a free agent. So technically, there shouldn't have been any way that I didn't at least get a shot.
Get a shot, right.
And I can't tell you what happened other than there were some scouts that said during the draft period, the agent that I signed with at the time, there was some front office people who didn't like that particular agency because they had a history of holding their clients out of camp. Once again, you look at the business side of what professional sports, what they are and how it breaks down. I'm not sure how much that played into it. I think a lot of it for me back then, being a smaller back, probably, I think my senior year, I weighed about 180, 182.
Okay. That's soaking wet, please.
And that's soaking wet. Now, just pound for pound, myself and Orlando were the strongest kids on that team, pound for pound. I benched 425 at 182, soaking wet, natural.
Proverbial brick shithouse is what you were back then.
So I squatted 650 pounds at 182, natural, soaking wet.
Yep, I remember seeing you that summer, and I could not believe your guns. It had been like 3 years since I seen you, and then all of a sudden you showed up, and I went, "Oh my God, Eugene, what has happened to you? You would just become a proverbial brick shithouse. There's no other words to describe it. You were, you were right there. So
yeah, I still wound up running. I think I clocked 4.33 in the 40 with a crack in my ankle.
Wow.
But I understand there were certain situations back then that when I look at it, years after, you got to look at the whole totality of how it works when you're talking about going from a major college program into the sports world and it's professional and all of that stuff. So there were certain people who were very close, gotten very close to, who started to tell me different things after the fact. And a lot of it played into, there were some people saying, you were injury prone. There was some saying, how do we know that if we draft him or we bring him in as a free agent, his agent is not going to hold him out? How do we know he's going to be able to hold up to an NFL season at his size? How do we know that his ankle is not going to, be a major problem for him the same way it nagged him at West Virginia? It could be. So these are all questions that, who knows?
Okay.
When I didn't get drafted, I wound up getting a letter back then from the World League.
The World League? Which league was this?
That was the World League. It just started back then. And What was it? 89.
The WFL? Really?
That's the W. Yeah.
I don't even. No, that's.
I'm getting a letter.
I don't remember that league at all. Go ahead. All right.
And ironically enough, trained, was in good shape. My ankle was about 90% at the time. 2 weeks before we were supposed to go to training camp, I get another letter that says we're going to have to basically renege on the contract and the offer because they were, in essence, they were going to sign a lot of the NFL talent that got cut out of camp to make up the roster in the World League.
Wow.
So what's interesting, which made sense, well, again, back then to me it didn't, but business-wise, think about it this way. The NFL didn't use the World League as a farm system.
Yeah, see, I don't remember this World League at all, and that's scary. Because I remember writing a story about you when you signed with the CFL. You went to Canadian Football League, right?
Yes.
Right around the same time, right?
And then I went to Saskatchewan in the CFL.
Yeah. You went to the Arena Football League first, or no?
Yeah, I played for Tampa Bay and I played for Orlando.
In the Arena Football League?
In the Arena Football League.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought it was the other way around. I thought you went CFL first and then Arena Football League second. So.
No,
okay.
AFL first, and ironically enough, I tell people this, and it's funny. I was blessed to play for a championship on every level, Jim.
Yep.
Played for in the Arena Bowl my rookie year. We lost, but we were there.
All right.
And it was a great experience. Then I went to Canada, and Saskatchewan was a really, really great opportunity.
And you did well in the CFL because the field was wider, and you were able to still turn the corner, and you were still running 4.3, 4.4, and playing in the CFL. That was like a blessing for you, like nobody else's business. Because didn't you get over 1,000 yards in the CFL?
I wish.
Oh, okay. I thought you did.
I wish. Well, back then, you think about this, what was the statement it is now? You see, when people say the CFL, it's more of a quarterback receiver game.
Right.
And they say the same thing.
Well, because it's only 3 downs.
Which is true. The AFL, I played out of position because they didn't have my natural position, which is a tailback.
Right.
You had to play fullback and then double as a Mike linebacker.
Right.
I wound up playing slot receiver and then playing corner and kickoff return specialist in the AFL. So that's the only semblance, where I was able to really showcase my natural abilities.
Okay.
But I'll share this with you with professional sports, and I'm glad to say it this way. It taught me a lot about business because I wound up firing all of my agents, Jim, and negotiating all my own contracts.
Okay.
When I retired, greatest thing of all, I wound up going and working on Wall Street for Refco, which then helped me to start my record company, which we still own to this day for 27 years.
Yep.
It also helped me to become a sports agent for 10 years.
Okay. Now, before we get into that, how many years did you play arena football? 2 years?
I had two years in arena football, 1 year in the CFL, retired, came back in the CFL when they came to the States in Memphis, the Memphis team.
Right.
Wound up getting hurt, retiring again, and I had one more shot in the AFL, which was ironic, with the New York City Hawks.
Okay.
At the age of 33, I came out of retirement.
Okay. And still in great physical condition, even at 33.
Still feeling good.
But weren't you working already on Wall Street when you got signed back to play in the Arena Football League? Yeah, already working on Wall Street.
It is ironic that, unfortunately, I hurt the lower part of my back, and that really ended, my professional career, because I knew once I rehabbed, I wasn't going to try to come back at age 34. So I decided to hang it up, which was a beautiful thing in a sense, because it opened up, obviously, the other doors on the business side to open up, our record label and the sports company and all that stuff.
All right, now talk a little bit about how did you become a teacher, and how did that happen?
In the Arena League, used to go do a lot of speaking engagements.
Right.
And I remember talking to kids, especially in the special needs program, where these kids wasn't in the regular building; they were in trailers in the parking lot.
Right.
And I remember saying that's just not this. I don't get it. And I understand the behaviors and all that kind of stuff. It always stuck with me that I wanted to maybe change that scenario. You know what I mean? So when I came back home, I wound up getting a phone call from the then superintendent in Jersey City talking about getting into teaching. And that's how it happened for me. I didn't think, to be honest with you.
Oh, so they recruited you to become a teacher?
Say it again?
The superintendent of schools in Jersey City recruited you to become a teacher?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and who was the superintendent then at that point? Remember?
Man, nah. I'm sorry, I don't.
All right.
It was so long ago. But I remember that conversation was, you're homegrown, people respect you, these kids need you, and I wound up subbing, because, you go through the whole, I wound up subbing.
Right.
And I got my first job at PS number 9.
Okay.
And then I wound up going from PS number 9 over to Lincoln High School. And I taught math and history at Lincoln, and then I wound up coming over to Linden, and I've been here ever since. I've been in Linden now for 22 years actually.
Wow. Okay.
So 24 years total, but 22 years here in Linden.
In Linden. All right. And then how did it come about that you started your own record company? And is that how you met your wife?
Yeah. Well, ironically, I met my wife way before then. My god sister Lisa Miller. They went to Jersey State together.
Oh, okay.
My wife played basketball at Union County and then over at Jersey State. And my sister Lisa kept telling me, my god sister, you got to come and see this girl play. She's tremendous. And you're thinking, well, she's that good. How is she at State? So the game I went to, Jim, she had 44 points, about 15 boards, and about 12 assists.
Okay.
So I'm like, wow, she is good.
She's good.
So we wound up,
and good looking.
And getting to know her. I found out she was into music, and she used to, write songs and all these different things. And we wound up staying connected the whole time.
Okay.
And one thing led to another, and we've been married now going on 29 years. Sure.
God bless. All right. And then when did she become a recording artist?
She started taking it seriously when I retired from playing. I promised her that I was going to definitely, put her in a position to do what she loves to do. I started the record label for her. You're talking 1995. Got her in the studio. Worked with a partner of mine, Russell Rosenthal from Wall Street, and he believed in what we were doing. Became a partner of what we were doing. And I'll tell you something. That first album, the Embrace album, we released it in September of 1995, and 18 months later, that album went gold. Wow.
And your wife's recording name is Naya. Right? Your wife's recording name is Naya?
Naya, N-Y-A.
Yeah. Right. But that her birth name is Tracy.
Tracy.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. But she still is she still recording to this day?
Oh yeah. Yeah. She has 16. Let me tell you something. 16 number one singles. 2.
On the number one singles on what chart? 16 number one singles on what chart?
She has there's several. The European charts, the world European charts, R&B Soul Effects TV charts. Wow. Yeah, the top 20 charts. A lot of these radio charts that they put out that are top 20 as well. Okay. I gotta say this because you would know the name. You remember PM Dawn?
Sure. They're from Jersey City. Cut a drift on Memory Bliss, right? That's a big hit.
There you go, Jim.
Yep.
Right now, the current single that's out right now, Chill With My Baby, was produced by my cousin Jared Cortez, the founding member of PM Dawn. Wow. Prince B unfortunately passed away 6 years ago. God bless him.
Yeah, very young age.
Yeah, so it was him and Jared. Jared is producing my wife's current EP right now. So he produced this current single that's out. It's number one right now. it won a platinum award from WBNC Radio in Philly with over 3.5 million listeners.
Wow.
It was number one on their charts for about, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, about 13 weeks.
Okay.
So you'll be seeing that. You'll be seeing the PM Dawn is coming out. Let me see. I'm not exactly sure when the air date will be, but I'm not sure. Unsung on TV One. Are you familiar with Unsung?
Okay.
That'll be out, and I'll let you know the air date. But the whole new episode starts to air March 6th. But they're doing the whole thing on PM Dawn, and my wife and myself are featured in that.
Wow. Okay. Got to look for that. Okay.
Definitely.
All right. So now talk a little bit about all the other things that you've done in your career. You've written a couple of books, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And your books are like inspirational books, right?
2006, it became a Barnes and Nobles and Amazon.com bestseller, which I'm blessed for that. And 2 years ago, I just put out an inspirational quotes book. It's called Reflections. That also became a Barnes and Noble's bestseller.
Wow.
So while I'm doing a few tours, did a tour that was actually sponsored by Verizon Wireless, and that was a great experience. So I do motivational speaking. My books, thank God, are still doing very, very well. I have a documentary that was out. My career at West Virginia. It's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
And that's called Inside the Jersey.
Which I've seen, and it's excellent. And I can't believe all the video footage they got of that is tremendous. I don't know where they were able to secure all that video footage of you both playing and then talking. It's a tremendous.
I went to Morgantown for 3 days.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, it was a 3-day shoot there, which again was a beautiful thing. You're talking about, playing all those years ago, and that was just 2 years ago. We released, that documentary. So
right.
That's what I mean by.
Unfortunately, that came out right as the pandemic was just about ready to hit. So
yes.
So that killed things a little bit.
It did, but think about that. That's what I mean. All those years later, that was just 2 years ago. I released that documentary, and just the fanfare was just unbelievable. My jersey, the 33 jersey, is being sold in the bookstores down there in Morgantown. It's just, that's what I mean by you can't even fathom something like that. But I thank God for it all, because it's just a great place to go to school and great memories. You know what I mean?
All right. So talk a little about you and Tracy. Have how many children?
We have one. Our son Brandon.
Just Brandon is the only child you have? Okay.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about Brandon, who was a great quarterback at St. Peter's Prep, and he had a few stops on the college tour.
Yes.
Just a few. But now talk a little bit about Brandon's in the coaching game, isn't he?
He's in the coaching game. This is his 3rd year. He just finished up as a grad assistant at the University of Buffalo. But he had his own room at Geneva, where he's the quarterback coach and pass game coordinator on defense, the corners coach there, and he was prior to that, he started his coaching career at Susquehanna, where he was the corners coach.
Okay.
And a few stops at.
And where did he play in college?
He played at West Virginia, and then he finished up at Kansas Western
University. Kansas Western, right? Okay.
Yeah, graduated there with his degree in communications.
Okay. And how old is he now? About 26?
28.
28. God, boy, time flies.
Yeah, he did the IFL thing. He did the indoor football league thing, and decided to play 1 year professionally in that, and decided that he wanted to start his life's journey a little bit quicker than most. Got into college coaching, and we're really, really proud of him.
Good, as well you should be. He's a great kid. So, so talk a little bit, and you also have a podcast too, as well, correct?
Yes, and I listen. And I thank God for you mentioning that. Thank you. Napoleon's Corner. It's on YouTube. If you find it, please subscribe to it. I appreciate it. And I also do myself and Scholar Callahan, and we do the College Game Day show for West Virginia, and that's sponsored by Sports Illustrated.
Oh wow! Okay.
So we do it. This is the 4th season going into that, which again I'm blessed to do that. It's fun. Obviously we cover West Virginia, but we do the other big games of that particular week. So this will be this season. I think it'll be the 5th year. With that, and again, I'm humbled. It's a great time. It really is.
And you're still teaching in the Linden school system, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is my tell you, Jim. It's 24 years. This is
Wow.
my 24th year.
Time does certainly fly. Okay, it certainly does. It certainly does fly. Okay, and then you also have, what's the name of your company that you do? You do motivational speaking. Don't you have a?
Yes. It's Nat Vision Entertainment.
Okay.
Yeah,
and that encompasses a whole bunch of different things. It does video, inspirational videos.
Yes.
It does podcasts. It does, you got a whole bunch of different venues that you're in, right?
Absolutely. And once again, I always say this: when God blesses you with the opportunity to have, multiple opportunities, you got to do the things that you're passionate about. I really believe that, because if you do things that you're passionate about, you never work a day in your life.
Right. No, that's a good point on your part. So, so all told, now as we're going to sum it up, how blessed are you to be able to have all of these things in your life, and it all began with sports in a humble background in the Marion Gardens in Jersey City?
Let me tell you something. I give all credence in all. My humility comes from the way I was brought up, and I thank God for that every day, Jim. You have no idea. Because being able to be out and do the things that I've done, people really don't. Again, I manage some of the most successful artists in the music, hip hop, and R&B genre of music. I manage the R&B group Total, which is platinum group from Bad Boy.
Okay.
I manage my cousin from PM Dawn. I manage my wife. I manage Kenny Black, who's a Grammy Award, Grammy considered producer, nominated artist. So when you're in that world, from a kid from me, like me, coming from the humble beginnings of Marion Gardens Projects, Jersey City, the fact that I'm grounded, I give all credence to God, my mother, and the way I was brought up from Jersey City. I tell that to anybody that would listen. Mm-hmm. So all these years later, I just turned 56, February 17th.
God bless.
Thank you. There's nothing that I would ever say that would take away from the experiences and all the things that I've learned from being from Jersey City, being from the Marion section, and understanding that those were all blessings. I don't look at it as it was, a tough time. No, I look at it as it prepared me for all of the things that I'm doing now in all of my life's journeys. I was prepared back then. So now, where I'm at now, I'm so grateful and humble for it.
Beautiful. Well, Eugene, this was an absolute joy of going through your life with me, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk. And again, if you can, let's give our listeners. There are ways of other than they can Google your name, which is not a hard thing to do. But is there a website that people can they can go to find?
EugeneNapoleon.com.
There you go. That's easy enough to remember. So, all right. So you can go to EugeneNapoleon.com and click that and check all the different things that Eugene has been involved with, both athletically and in the music field and in motivational speaking. He's had an incredible career. And again, that documentary, Inside the Jersey, right, is the name of the documentary. What a great documentary that was. And you can see that if you go to search on demand, that'll pop up, and you can get a chance to watch that. And that's an absolute fascinating journey, almost as fascinating as this podcast has been, but it's got pictures, so that's why it's much better. So, but Eugene, this was an absolute joy of you taking the time to talk to me today. And I wish you nothing but the best of health and success moving forward. And I hope to see you somewhere down the road real soon.
Absolutely. Jim, thank you so much. I appreciate you, buddy.
No problem, pal. You take care of yourself, all right? And I'll see you soon. All right. Bye-bye.
You guys. Stay blessed.
And that was my special guest today, Eugene Napoleon, who had a great career at St. Joe's of the Palisades in West New York, Jersey City. Boy, going to St. Joe's of the Palisades. and ended up having a great career at West Virginia University and a pro career, and now he's still teaching at in the Linden school system. So he was my special guest today. I'd like to thank my executive producer Johnny Haig. Without him, this podcast wouldn't take place. And I'd like to also thank once again my chief sponsor for the podcast, which is Stan Sports Center, which is your local full-service sporting goods vendor and authorized team dealer. They offer quality products and dozens of brands to outfit your team top to bottom. Stan's has proudly been supporting the local community since 1946 and is your one-stop shop for uniforms, equipment, online team stores, and so much more. Locations in Hoboken and Saddlebrook, and they just opened a warehouse in Boonton, so they're really expanding and servicing the tri-state area. Visit them on the web at Stan's Plural, Sports Plural, CTR.com. That's Stan's Plural, Sports Plural, CTR.com. And check them out on social media for all their latest creations. That's Stan's Sports Center, located at 528 Washington Street in Hoboken. Telephone number there, 201-798-4466. And if you say to the guys down there, Danny and Todd and Lou, that you listen to the Hudson County Sports Podcast and Eugene Napoleon, you will get 10% off on anything that's retail in the store. Not a bad deal at all. So check them out, and then we thank Stans for being such a great sponsor and being the main sponsor of the Hudson County Sports Podcast. Thank you very much for listening to the Hudson County Sports Podcast today, and we hope you tune in next week for the next edition. I'm your host, Jim Haig, and have a pleasant evening.